All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Thursday, April 10th, right here on your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. This is All In Horns, and today's episode probably going to be a quick one, but we are going to get into some Texas football. Haven't had a Texas football episode. Haven't really talked too much about Texas football in during the offseason, and with the draft coming up, March Madness wrapping up, and everything else just kind of circulating. I'm kind of getting a small itch, Jake, a small itch for football season again already. And so we're going to talk a little bit of spring ball. This will be a quicker episode, but we're just going to hit on a couple of points from Steve Sarkisian's press conference that he held a couple of days ago, earlier this week. Give a quick update, kind of a state of the program, if you will. No real big news in terms of recruiting or anything like that. Maybe some whispers here and there. But just kind of how the spring practices has gone, player updates, and some players getting some looks at certain positions that we're excited to talk about. So, Jake, based on that, what are some things that jumped out to you that Steve Sarkisian spoke about during his press conference?
So first off, I just wanted to mention before we go into Steve Sarkisian, Arch signed a deal with Vuori, I think is how you say it, a men's athletic wear company for an NIL deal. And Jerry Hamilton of On Texas Football tweeted out that Arch is going to likely earn around $20 million in NIL this year. Yeah. So when people are like, why would he come back for another year? Well, he can probably make more than what he'll make on his rookie deal and get more experience. And that's already kind of what him and the family wanted to do. With NIL, it's a little bit of a game changer when you're like a quarterback.
Can you imagine, Jake, say he wins the Heisman and doesn't win a national championship, but makes it very close or plays in the national championship game, and he feels as though he has unfinished business and can make probably upwards to $20 to $30 million in back-to-back years in college, and which would be more than a rookie contract in the NFL. I mean, there would be no reason for him not to stay.
Yeah, I mean, if he's and that's guaranteed. You know, NFL contracts can be very wonky. They've gotten better for quarterbacks, obviously, but on a rookie deal, I mean, yeah, he'd be making more. Significantly
you're capped
more.
out now. I mean, they don't have the Matthew Stafford,
it's
Sam
not
Bradford,
the Sam Bradford
right.
type contract, which even then he's still making more. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that first because that's crazy. But on Sarkisian, this is going to shock you of what my biggest takeaway and excitement was his talk about DJ Campbell. Yeah, you know me. I never give the O-line credit, so I got to come out here and lead off with the offensive line. But just talking about DJ Campbell, this is the best version of DJ Campbell they've gotten. He's the vocal leader now, and just he's taken a big step forward. And I think how good DJ Campbell was last year kind of got buried by the Kelvin Banks of the world, buried by the
Cam Williams,
even the Hayden Connor, because Hayden Connor kind of was really good last year. Jake Majors was also kind of underappreciated, but you know, they're veteran, kind of veteranness to them and their ability in pass pro, because when you get beaten pass pros and offensive linemen, even if it only happens once in a game, everyone thinks you had a terrible game because you gave up one obvious sack that was clearly your fault. And that's just the life of an offensive lineman.
Or you have a sack and then you throw in a false start or a holding or something.
Yeah, one penalty and a sack given up, and you played a crappy game, even if 70 out of 72 snaps were perfection.
Right.
You played a crappy game. Offensive line is one of the most cruel positions, and it doesn't get talked about enough. How people go, well, quarterback throws quarterback throws a lot of incompletions in the game typically, or at least, you know, quite a few, 30% incompletions. And that's a great game. And then an offensive lineman has 3% bad plays and it's a bad game because those stuck out.
Jake, if I told you that your quarterback threw for 72%, 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, you would qualify that as a
Yeah, I mean it would matter when the interceptions happen, but I'd
and a
qualify
win.
that as
And a win.
oh, you win, then yeah, he played a winning game because
Yeah.
the interceptions didn't affect it, and he threw a good completion percentage, had 3 touchdowns. Like you're always going to get fans who complain no matter what if it's not 100% completion percentage and perfection, but the lineman position especially is picked out. But I think DJ Campbell's going to be. I think him coming back is really going to pay off for him, kind of like it paid off for Jahdae Barron. Where, Campbell could have probably gone 3rd, 4th round in the draft this year. I would say he could play himself into a 1st-round pick, but honestly, I've given up on the NFL's ability to evaluate offensive linemen, considering I'm seeing mocks of Kelvin Bank falling to the Kansas City Chiefs. If that happens, don't call, don't ask, don't check. I'm not in a good spot. But I think it'll pay off well for him, and he could work himself up to maybe even like the 2nd round, which is a big money jump. And just I think it'll improve his ability to step in somewhere and maybe play right away. Because I think he's going to have a really special year on the 40 acres. And it sounds like from the practice reports I've read and from what Sarkisian said, kind of backing up what those practice reports have said and in that press conference, tells me DJ Campbell's probably going to be a different animal than we've seen. And he's already been pretty damn good his first few years on campus, just maybe not quite up to that 5-star blue chip status that he was. I think he will live up to that and more in his final season.
Yeah, well, and he should, I mean, he's going to be the returning starter. He's going to be the guy on that offensive line that, when things are kind of maybe going a little haywire, it's probably going to be him, his voice to that offensive line, either on the sideline, in the huddle, or what have you, of kind of setting the tone of, look, guys, it's not the end of the world. We can make this up. We've been in much harder situations, or I've experienced much tougher situations that we've overcome. The Arizona State game, what have you. He'll be able to fall back on that where other guys maybe not so much. And then you throw in the excitement of having a Trevor Gooseby, a Brandon Baker on the bookends and stuff like that. And I think that also sets up for a lot of excitement of what is otherwise an unproven offensive line.
Yeah, and Trevor Gooseby, I mean, I was reading a report the other morning, and it said something along the lines that the coaching staff and inside sources are expecting little to no drop off, if any, at the left tackle position. Coming from what I will say to me is the best tackle I've ever seen play at the University of Texas.
But I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be a late 1st round, maybe early 2nd round pick.
Tanner, we want to keep this episode shorter today. We'll save that for when we'll let it play out. I've already done a rant about this. We will let the draft play out before I scream into this microphone for 30
Here
minutes.
is honestly how I see it playing out, because we saw a lot of Bijan Robinson talk in the draft too about him falling late into the 1st round because he's a running back, and that no one's picking running backs in the top 10 anymore. And I stuck to my guns of saying he is one of the most talented prospects that I've ever seen come out of college, period, point blank. When a player of that caliber is up for grabs and a team is very starved for skill positions or just players of any caliber of talent that is that good, you take them. You take them early. You don't care what the position is. And that left tackle, that is a premier position in the NFL. And you absolutely,
but his hands might be 1/10 of an inch smaller than you would like.
If you are a top 10 team and you need an offensive line or a left tackle, which I would say 80% of the top 10 teams could probably use an upgrade on the offensive line. There's no reason why you should let Kelvin Banks or Will Campbell, for that matter. I'm not even an anti-Will Campbell guy. There's no reason for either one of those two guys to slide out of the top 10, top 15. There's just no reason for it.
Top 10. And it ended its story. I mean, Kelvin Banks shouldn't fall out of the top 5 if we're being completely honest here, and 30 seconds. I'm taking 30 seconds. That's all I'm doing.
All right, we're at 10-minute mark.
It doesn't make sense because they were talking about his measurements before the draft, and then all of his measurements turned out to be above what everyone thought. And yet they're just make-believing, over-analyzing him to dropping to being the third or fourth tackle taken. I hope teams do that so they can all feel really stupid at the end of this, and all these experts can also look really stupid. Under time.
Yeah, you did in 25 seconds. Congratulations. All right, Jake. Another thing that came out of the press conference as well. Obviously, Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill, Malik Muhammad, and Mookie Taff all returning on the defensive side of the ball. Those are leaders at every level of your defense. Your defensive line, your linebacker, your corners, and your safeties. Every level you've got an experienced, should be one of the premier players in the entire country at every level. Here's my thing, Jake. Could this defense be better than last year's defense?
That's tough because Jahdae Barron, I think, is the reason they won't be. He was so special at corner last year. I just don't think you're going to have a corner that gets beat. And then also the tough thing is you're probably a lot of the offenses they're going to go against are probably going to be improved from last year.
Florida.
So numbers wise, I just find it hard to believe that their numbers are going to look the same. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. They proved me wrong plenty last year.
Yeah.
But they're going to be Oklahoma's offense is going to be better than last year. Granted, not saying much, but still.
That still may mean that they're not a very good offense.
A&M's offense is probably going to be better because they're returning everyone. Florida is the biggest obvious one. That game will be on the road as well. One of the toughest games probably on the schedule. Ohio State.
Pavia is coming back.
Pavia again, and Vanderbilt did have a decent game. Not great, but decent against that defense at least. And then you also have Ohio State instead of Michigan. So yeah. I don't think I see their numbers being the same, but dude, I think they can be close to as good. I definitely think they can. I just don't think the numbers are going to look the same because I think their strength of schedule from a offensive talent perspective is going to be much higher than it was this past year. Because I do think the defense was great last year, end of story. But at the same time, the numbers looking as crazy as they did, especially for today's game, was helped out by the schedule because they could have a bad game and it not be that big of a deal because the team they were playing had a poor offense.
I could see a Mississippi State offense who came on much stronger towards the end of the season than when Texas played them early on in conference play. I could see them improving slightly in terms of just as an entire team. But yeah, no, I obviously Georgia's going to be Georgia. They'll be where they're at,
and D tackle too. I mean, I think they'll be fine at D tackle. I don't know if they're going to get the play that they've gotten the last 2 years.
I think I'm going to say that they're going to be a faster defense. I don't know if they'll be as physical, but I think they're going to be a faster defense. I think that we're also going to see different packages where you're going to see Taff, Jelani McDonald, and Derek Williams on the field all at the same time. Plus, maybe a Leona Lafau and an Anthony and an Ant Hill out there all at the same time.
Trey Moore, linebacker, edge. He's going to play a little bit everywhere. I mean,
just flying around. I think the speed sideline to sideline for this defense, it's going to be very difficult to get an edge on this defense. You're going to have to line up in a 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, and just try to bully them backwards if you're going to try to get any type of push on this Texas defense. I think that is where team success will come from. I'm not 100% sure how many teams are built like that. Georgia, Ohio State, maybe the 2 teams Texas lost to last season that they will have on their schedule this season that are going to be built to have that type of success against this defense. So in those terms, maybe we see another kind of surprise in terms of how well this team. I do expect a top 10 defense and at this point. I think the staff has kind of proven that, and they have enough returning players that shouldn't be a huge drop off.
Yeah, because even with the schedule being, because the reason I say their numbers won't match up to last year, and I would say I expect top 15 to top 20. It's just because the QB play is going to be tougher, and we saw even with last year's defense, the best quarterback they went against all year was probably Cade Klubnik. He lit him up. The defense did not win that game by any means.
Well, and the defense kind of, they let up a lot more against Arizona State than I would have liked to see them. I know they played well in the first half, but man, that second half was dreadful.
Yeah, and that was a lot of power run game. And I it'll be interesting to see how they defend the power run game this next year, because that was a concern last year. It did show weaknesses at times, but only really at the top end of the power run teams in the country were able to expose that. And then just going against, the one elite quarterback, but then at the same time, they went against the Ohio State offense that was scoring 50 on everyone. And pretty much shut them down, or at least comparatively.
Yeah, and Le'Veon Moss for A&M, he's returning, correct? I believe he's coming back.
Yeah, I believe A&M's actually going to have a pretty good team next year. They're going to be a lot better than this past year, and they weren't bad this past year.
Just another year under Elko, you get another. You're going to actually know who your starting quarterback is going to be for sure. It's Marcel Reed. There is no back and forth between him and Connor Wegman or anything like that. Le'Veon Moss is coming back. They're going to
until he has one bad game.
Until he has one bad game, and then he'll be benched. But yeah, which will probably happen, I would assume, before the Texas game. But yeah, I do think, I don't know about. They're losing a lot of talent on the defensive line, so it might be a little bit of a rebuild on the front seven for Texas A&M. But they've always got talent.
They're returning, I think, 9 of 11 on offense and like 7 on defense or something like that. Yeah. I mean, they're going to be good next year, and they don't hurt in recruiting. And I do think Elko's probably the best football coach when it comes to just football, X's and O's, defensive side of the ball, especially. That they've had in some time.
People forget that was a play-in game for the SEC championship appearance.
Yeah,
for Texas A&M.
And even though Texas kind of dominated them, they only won by 10, and all it would have taken was a couple plays swinging the wrong way for that to change. So, granted, Quinn was playing on half an ankle, if that. Yeah, and so there's more that goes into that game, but. I do think Texas is going to have a tougher schedule next year, but I'm kind of excited about that because I do think the ceiling for the team is really high. And I think we're already starting to kind of see why with some of these initial reports coming out. There's just a lot more question areas than there were even going into last year with all the talent they lost the year before. There's a lot more unproven depth at wide receiver, at tight end, at offensive line. The whole offensive hype machine is fueled behind Arch Manning, really. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you have a lot of studs returning for sure, but you're replacing a Jahdae Barron. That's not easy. Who's going to play the star position if Gilbo's moving out to corner, which seems like they want to do, because it sounds like Gilbo could almost have a Barron-like transition to corner. And then D tackles, who are they going to get in the portal coming up? And the same could be said for tight end, because I do think they will hit the portal for tight end and D tackle for sure. What's D tackle going to look like? Is it going to be? I think they'll be fine from a depth perspective. To me, it's the question of, will the ceiling of the play of the D tackles reach close to what it's reached in the last couple of years?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. But yeah, Jake, we've got wide receivers getting some reps with Wingo being out currently of practice, and some of these
DeAndre Moore as well is out.
DeAndre Moore still healing from his injury towards the end of the season, and so some of these other guys getting a chance, some of these freshman recruits getting a chance to step up, and some of these guys that were on the lower end of the depth chart that we were excited about hearing about, because I think there is going to be a DeAndre Moore out of this upcoming group, kind of these secondary, afterthought wide receivers that we're not putting a whole lot of recognition on and notoriety on come springtime. And then it's going to be around week 3, week 4, getting prepped up for conference play, where we're going to be like, wait a second, who's this guy? What He's playing much better than maybe what we thought, even if it's a Ryan Niblett or if it's a, Parker Livingston or
Niblett's playing defense right now.
That's right.
And
That's right. Yeah.
supposedly looking pretty good.
Yeah.
He's a guy that we may see get some snaps on the defensive side.
I always forget that Niblett's now moved over to the
he's been I mean, that's a guy that's a program guy.
Yeah.
He's made position switches
around. Yeah.
Hustles hard. He's a 4-star recruit. This isn't some 2-star, 3-star player trying to make his way up, but he is doing it the hard way. And I'd love for him to find a way on the field, because I feel like with his effort and his speed, he can make plays somewhere.
Yeah. Lastly, Jake, let's talk a little bit about Arch Manning and his relationship with the team. The fact that his vibes in the locker room are going to be a little bit different, but also the vibes on the practice field. Whenever the defense or whenever he makes a play against the defense, he's letting the defense hear it. They know whenever he makes a play, they know about it.
He just has a little bit more natural swagger to him than Quinn. Quinn became a great leader, but he had to develop that, which there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone's got a different personality. Arch just has that kind of natural vibe because, quite frankly, Arch has had to, because he's grown up with the last name Manning. And so he's just got that natural swagger about him that comes out in the practice field. And Sark was kind of just saying he lets the defense have it. He's not afraid to talk trash. And he gets the guys going. He's much more vocal than Quinn was. Even last year, where Quinn was the obvious leader of the program last year, the players made that obvious. With how they supported him, wearing his shirts and all that stuff. The whole team was behind him, but it's a easy transition, I would say, to Arch, him being the leader as well. Because I definitely don't want to take any shots at Quinn, because I think Quinn became a great leader, but Arch is just so natural at it that it's not a drop off. If anything, it's an upgrade or level on the leadership side of things.
Yeah, I think we're also going to see a different play style from Arch than what we've already seen from him. Not from Quinn, but from what we've already seen from Arch. I think we're going to see a different play style where it's not going to be as run heavy as maybe some people are expecting. Does he have the ability? Obviously. Can he do it? Yes, he can in a pinch. I think very early on in the season, maybe aside from the Ohio State game, but against some of these lower level schools, or even some of the, Sark has already talked about how you kind of need to give guys a little bit more rest, even in the second half, where, if you think you've got the game wrapped up, go ahead and start subbing guys out and getting them rest, even if it's at important positions like quarterback or something, or your offensive line, because come playoff time, going through this long extended playoff period that we went through this last season, I think it opened Sark's eyes up a lot of if you are not healthy going into the playoffs, you're done. You're not gonna win it. And so I think we're gonna see a very different style, kind of what Ohio State did with Will Howard. Will Howard was always a running caliber guy, but instead they held in the reins a little bit, and then they let him loose come playoff time. And I think that'll be kind of a recipe for Arch Manning at Texas.
That was the exact example I was going to use, was how Will Howard was utilized. Didn't run it much, was kind of talked about. Why aren't they using his legs? Well, because you're not playing 14 games anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You got to play, 16, 17 to win a national title. And that's a big difference. That's a lot more wear and tear on the body, because 14 was already quite a bit. And it used to be like 12. So yeah, it's a long grind of a schedule now, especially when you add in conference championship games, which is something we've talked about. That probably I expect that will go away here in the near future. Yeah. And so I do think in Texas it would be smart to do that. You don't need Arch scrambling all over the place against UTSA against.
I think you're going to have, unless it is the style of quarterback that they are, like a Lamar Jackson or something, I don't think you're going to be getting seasons like Cam Newton seasons anymore, Jake. I just don't see that kind of quarterback where it's so physical and so beating throughout, where it's not, I have to play a conference championship game, and then a national championship. It's, I need to play a conference championship game and then possibly 3 more playoff games to win a national championship.
Yeah. And it's a smart, because if you don't have your quarterback, you're probably not winning.
Right.
a national title. Look at Georgia.
Look at Georgia. Yeah.
You know, that's even though I don't think what's his name, Gunner
Stockton.
Thank you, Stockton was the issue. It's just such a change whenever your quarterback goes down, and so keeping Arch healthy, especially this year where you don't have Arch Manning as your backup, you have either Trey Owens or KJ Lacey, which are both very talented quarterbacks, but very young and completely inexperienced.
And also not Arch Manning.
So keeping him healthy is going to be priority one. And that means even though fans are excited about his running ability, I am too. I don't want to see it very much. Maybe in the Ohio State game, and then I don't want to see it again until SEC play and even in the SEC games in that middle part, you don't really tell him to scramble unless you're in a tight game. And at that point, tell him to, let the wheels loose if it's there. But otherwise, he needs to at least be protecting himself when he scramble and slide early, if anything.
And not lead with the head and try to bull people over and things
like that.
Or
try to get an extra yard by diving. The 2 extra yards aren't worth missing 2 games, because that could be the difference between making the playoffs and not making the playoffs, especially with Texas having a tougher schedule this year. Because if they just lost to who they lost to last year, that's 2 losses already. And as we saw this year, we thought 3 losses would be pretty easy to make it in with a 12-team playoff. Not the case. And so you don't have much leeway there. Even with a fairly easy SEC schedule comparatively to what it could be. But when you have Ohio State and Georgia on your schedule, you don't have much leeway because you're probably going to drop one of those games.
Jake, this is off the wall, has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And in case nobody could tell, we did not prep for this show at all. This is just, hey, Jake, you want to talk about football today? And he said, yeah. And so this is just us talking, 2 dudes talking football. Dude, we need to try to save up and try to get to Gainesville this year. I think that might be a game. It's either Gainesville or it's the Cotton Bowl. We can pick one or the other.
Yeah, I think either. I've been to the Cotton Bowl once. I want to go to that game as many times as I can in my lifetime.
Yeah.
It is truly the
most
you and I
not going
atmosphere.
to a game last year was a crime. So
I lucked out with the Arkansas game working out with my uncle, but we need to be going to a game every year. Life is not long enough for us not to be at this point in our adult life.
Yeah. I completely agree. All right, Jake. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode. Again, we're coming out with these episodes Monday through Friday until football season. Then we switch the schedule to Tuesday through Saturday. But Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, 30 minutes of your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And keep giving us ideas, keep giving us comments, keep giving us the interactions. I know, it's not the thick of football season, but that doesn't mean we don't provide you daily content for all things Texas Longhorns athletics. For Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. We are your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.